Welcome to the Dynasty One podcast. I am your host, Carl Safchik, and today I am joined by a good friend who is often a guest on the show, but today is guest hosting, and that is Nathan Powell from the Dynasty Tradecast on RotoViz and of DLF. How you doing tonight, Nathan?
Yo, what's up, Carl? Always happy to be on the show and talk some Dynasty with you. It's always fun to talk with you and all the great guests that you have on Dynasty One.
Yeah, absolutely. And later on, we're going to be joined by Kevin O'Brien, who just started up his own podcast, which is a fun listen. He's also always been a good friend of the show, heading back years and years. And he's going to come on. We're going to talk about the rookie class. That's mostly what our guest segment will have to do with. But we have some quick news and notes. We have a couple of Dynasty twins that we're going to go over. First and foremost, this kind of just these first two news items kind of just happened. The Buffalo Bills failed to match the New England contract offer for Mike Gillislee. They had till 4:00 today. We're recording this on Monday to match. They didn't, which isn't a huge surprise. But now that we know that it's for sure, who, if any, is the running back to own in New England?
I've often called the analysis from the last 10 years of avoid the Bill Belichick running backs, avoid the Patriots running backs. That's lazy analysis for the most part. But the way it has become with their backfield right now, with Rex Burkhead and with Mike Gillislee and with Dion Lewis and James White, there are just too many mouths to feed, and not one of them are exponentially better than the other. So I feel like this is just a bunch of guys who should be like RB3s on NFL teams, but they're going to combine to getting RB1 touches. So I'm not sure that there's a guy that you really want to own in fantasy here. I think that maybe the sneaky one to go after is Dion Lewis, because there's a chance that he gets cut and then gets to go elsewhere. And then that would be the best situation for any of the backs there, is to not be there. So I think that the intriguing part there is that they have so many backs now, and there's a chance that they may cut Dion Lewis. I think of the backs there, he's the most likely to be cut.
There's two reasons I like Dion Lewis. One, for the thing that you mentioned. First of all, I really like Dion Lewis as a player. Second of all, for the reason that you mentioned, he could be on a different team. And third, I think the one thing that we can go back to see, because you're right, it is kind of lazy analysis to say just don't own New England running backs. It's mostly true, but the one thing is LeGarrette Blount last year and Dion Lewis the year before, what did they have in common? They were very cheap. So that's another reason I like Dion Lewis this year. And James White even this year is very cheap. One intriguing strategy I could see is taking like all three of Burkhead, Gillislee, and White like late in a best ball dynasty. Obviously, I would not want the headache of trying to figure out who to start each week. But if I could have that decision made for me with the power of hindsight, then I'll take that.
Yeah, I just think that's a lot of roster capital invested in one thing panning out. It's kind of like, even if it's just like, 15th, 16th, and 17th round picks, that's still 3 spots on your roster dedicated to, okay, the Patriots running back each week, which I guess is going to pan out week to week. One of them is going to work out, but I'm just not looking to invest that much of a backfield into my roster.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's something I would do, but it's something I would consider. And like you said, like if it was 15th, 16th, and 17th, and obviously maybe you have like a LaShawn McCoy, or maybe you're going 0 running back, that would be a way to go 0 running back and kind of guarantee a pretty good running back if you combine the 3. This just dropped too. The New Orleans Saints are closing in on a deal to sign Adrian Peterson. What does this do for the Saints offense, and should you be furious if you own Mark Ingram right now?
Our boy Ryan McDowell tweeted this out when this news came out, and he said, sometimes dynasty is easy. Buy Mark Ingram, sell Adrian Peterson. And I am, as usual, agreeing with Ryan here. I think Adrian Peterson is a guy who's way past his prime. It's not like he's getting a big contract. He's getting like a $3 million deal, which is really nothing in today's NFL. So I think that Ingram is still slated to be the RB1 there, even if Peterson does end up signing a deal. And I think the one worry would be it does cap his, touchdown upside. I think that Peterson would likely end up getting a lot of the, short yardage work, and especially the goal line work. So I think this lowers Ingram from a potential like low end RB1. So okay, maybe we're more looking at a range of RB15 to RB21 for Mark Ingram, which is still a solid output for the price that you're likely getting him at.
I agree. Well, I don't know if I'm buying Mark Ingram, but I'm definitely checking the price on him. I think the funny thing is about Mark Ingram, look, none of us really were in love with Adrian Peterson before this happened. The thing that this does is it makes Mark Ingram be in a running back by committee, which he was going to be anyway, whether they drafted somebody. I knew they probably weren't going to bring back Hightower, but they were going to give somebody else touches too. The thing is, every other running back in the NFL, except for maybe 4, are in a running back by committee. So it doesn't matter that Adrian Peterson might be a pretty decent backup comparatively to a lot of other teams. Mark Ingram's going to get he's going to get his turn on the field. And I agree it might take away some touchdown upside, but I don't see any reason he couldn't be a low-end RB1, like in the best case scenario. And like you said, probably more of a mid RB2. And I'm definitely checking the price to see if somebody values him even less than that now. Moving on, we'll go back to the Buffalo Bills. They reportedly may not exercise a 5th-year option on Sammy Watkins. This came out last week. We weren't able to do a show last week, so I wanted to get this question in. Could that be beneficial to his dynasty value? A lot of people say that his upside is capped because of where he is.
I am of the opinion that this is not a good thing for Sammy Watkins and his dynasty value. There's a reason why teams don't pick up 5th-year options. It's because they don't think the player is beneficial to their future. And while teams make mistakes, teams let players go that they shouldn't. Traditionally, NFL teams know more than we do. So if they let Sammy Watkins walk, maybe it's because they think they believe in injury prone, and fantasy analysts for the most part don't really believe in that. So I think that's the one really occasion where I'm willing to bet against what the NFL teams do. So I mean, it's tough to really know why they're not exercising the option. But if that's the reason, then okay, I'm kind of fading this news. Like I don't really care about what's happening. But if it's for anything other than that, like worth ethic issues or things like that, then it's definitely a concern because the things that he's doing in Buffalo, they're not really going to change exponentially when he goes to a different team. So for me, it's never good news when a team decides to do something like this, like not pick up an option, because it shows a lack of faith in a player. And for me, I want the organization to always have lots of faith in the players that I invest in.
Yeah, no doubt. I just think this is a unique situation in that the 5th-year option in itself is unique. It guarantees fully for injury. So it's not just like, oh, we are going to extend him 1 year on the contract. It's the way that the 5th-year option works that I think that they were just specifically worried about paying him in the same way that like Washington was worried about paying RG3 when they exercised a 5th-year option, but then they just benched him. They just never let him play. He was only active on games that like they needed the roster spots for other people to sit. So it's just the 5th-year option specifically, the way it guarantees for injury. I would say I'm not worried about what they think of him as a player, but more of just the situation. They could hypothetically decline the 5th-year option and then see him playing well a few games into year 4 and decide to try to open up negotiations with him. So if I understand the way that the contract works correctly. So I don't look at it as a bad thing. And if people really believe that Buffalo doesn't believe in Tyrod Taylor, or if you believe that you just don't want Sammy Watkins in Buffalo, I could see how it could be viewed as beneficial. But I'm not moving him up or down drastically on my rankings due to this. I threw this question in specifically for you. The New York Giants exercise Odell Beckham's 5th-year option. That's not so much news, but it's a good chance to talk about his value in Dynasty. Do any other players even come close as a long-term asset?
Yes, there are players that come close to Odell Beckham as a long-term asset. I think that Evans is neck and neck with him in one quarterback format, and I think that in Superflex 2 QB, there's a conversation to be had for Andrew Luck and maybe even Aaron Rodgers at this point. But I also think that Amari Cooper could slide into that conversation. He's not in that conversation right now, but I think there's a chance that he is in the next 8 to 12 months. So for me, I don't really buy into the whole this player is untouchable, this player is worth 8 first argument, even when it is Odell Beckham or Mike Evans. But I do love having the safety of a guy like Odell Beckham, who I think is going to be a top 5 wide receiver for the next 7 to 8 years. And some people will say, oh, that's hyperbole. How can you predict 8 years in the future? But when it's a player that's this historically good, it's all but a lock outside of injury or suspension.
Yeah, and I'm not where I used to be, where I think Evans as the 102 is crazy. He played very, very well last year. A lot of it was because of being a target hog, but that's not a bad thing in and of itself. He was a little bit efficient, but some of that can happen when you are the team's only option. I mean, you had Cameron Brate, who wasn't even expected to be the starter, as the second option, and I think that while Djax won't take a lot of targets away from Evans, he will help roll coverage away. But I do think that Odell Beckham's in a league of his own and in a tier of his own as the 101. And in Superflex, I agree. You can make the case for Andrew Luck or Aaron Rodgers, maybe Cam, maybe Russell Wilson. It gets fishy. And if you're in a league, which we are in a 14-team Superflex league, well, really it's a 28-team with copies. So I treat it as if it's a 14-team Superflex league. Quarterbacks become even more value. So in that case, I might move them up even more. But just specifically talking about Odell Beckham Jr., I just think he's in a league of his own. I mean, is that crazy to say? I would be willing to give probably 3 firsts for Mike Evans. If we're just talking random first, I think I would give 3 firsts for Mike Evans and maybe a back end of the roster player. I think I would give 4 firsts for OBJ if I had 4 2018 firsts, or the random order hasn't happened yet for the 2017 draft, and I had 4 random firsts. I think I would give those for OBJ. Does that seem outrageous to you, or?
No, I'm completely on board with both of those. And for me, I mean, I saw Mike Evans go 101 in the startup, and I'm his biggest fan, but I would never take him over Odell Beckham Jr. I think that Odell Beckham and Mike Evans, their ceilings are similar, their medians are similar. It's their floors are where I think that they separate. Odell Beckham's floor is a long-term wide receiver too. Mike Evans' floor is out of the league in 5 years. So I think that people don't, people will continue to dismiss drops. And for the most part, I think it's accurate to dismiss drops, but that can get out of the league if it happens, frequently enough.
I want to move on to ADP twins, but I want to stay in that Tampa Bay offense. One of the ADP twins we had this week from the Dynasty League Football ADP, or not this week, but this month, the April ADP, was John Brown and Deshaun Jackson. Who would you prefer?
This is a tough one here because I was a bit of a John Brown supporter in years prior, but I think I'm taking Deshaun Jackson here. I don't think that he has the upside that maybe John Brown has, but I think that John Brown has more of a chance of just not being fantasy relevant ever again. The Cardinals offense has room for fantasy relevancy to happen after Larry Fitzgerald. It's pretty much J.J. Nelson and John Brown and Jerron Brown. But I mean, he obviously has to play better than he did last year. And with Deshaun Jackson, he's going to get the targets. You said earlier that he did not necessarily taking away targets from Mike Evans. I think he is taking away targets, but he's taking away the bad targets. The reason why Mike Evans was inefficient was because Jameis was giving him all these bad targets. So when Jameis is going to have multiple weapons in the offense, with Brate improving with Deshaun Jackson in the offense, the targets are going to be better to both Deshaun Jackson and and Evans, rather than Winston forcing the ball to Evans nonstop.
Yeah, and I should be clear with Deshaun Jackson going to Tampa Bay. I don't think that Mike Evans won't lose any targets, but I guess my point was Deshaun Jackson was the perfect type of player to go there because he's not a target hog. He's not gonna see 100 target, 120 targets a season. He's gonna get 5 long balls a game, or something like that. If I don't know if you're looking. If you're not, don't look. what is the difference in age between John Brown and Deshaun Jackson? If you're not looking, just take it.
I'm not. I'd say 5 years.
3 years, a little over 3 years.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
How's Deshaun right now?
Deshaun's 30 and John Brown is
26.
27.
He's 20. Holy smokes.
Yes. John Brown entered the league relatively very old.
I knew he was old. That's why I said 26, but I didn't expect.
Yeah, he turned 27 almost a month ago. So he's a new 27. And Deshaun Jackson will turn 31 before the season's over. So it's like a little less than 3.5 years. But I mean, that I would think most people would perceive that. And I think when you said that John Brown has higher upside, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but would you venture to say he had better long-term upside? Because I think Deshaun Jackson might have equal season-long upside.
Yes. I mean, I think that both of them probably cap out around like wide receiver 18, wide receiver 19 this year. But the difference is if John Brown is wide receiver 18 this year, he vaults up to like a 6th-round startup pick. If D-Jax has a wide receiver 18 year, he's still at like an 11th or 12th round guy.
Yeah, he probably stays about the same, right? And yeah, I totally agree with that. And that's why but with the age and with people like say John Brown has a low-end wide receiver 2 season. He's going to be 28 next year. That's when everybody's really going to start being like people are going to start considering him old at 28, which look, you know firsthand, I'm not usually the guy to do that, but I know that is the perception. And I think people, when they think John Brown, they think 24, 25 years old.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. What was the other? Oh, the other ADP twin. I think I'm going to agree with you. We agreed on that one too, but I think I'm going to agree with you on this. This is an ADP twin that I've been really wanting to talk about. Carlos Hyde and Derrick Henry. Who would you rather have?
So this is interesting because I'm going to start off by saying this. Carlos Henry, Jesus. I'm going to start off by saying
have both. Can't have both.
I'm going to start off by saying this. Carlos Hyde, something has to happen for Carlos Hyde not to get, like 200 carries in 2017, whereas something has to happen for Derrick Henry to get 200 carries in 2017. So basically, you're banking on the Niners selecting a running back fairly early in order for Hyde not to be a workhorse back and, giving you those RB touches. And people have made the argument before that while this is Dynasty, you can kind of treat the running back position more like redraft. So there are arguments to be made for Carlos Hyde here. But with the end all be all, you just got to look at Derrick Henry being the superior talent in the superior offense in the superior situation. And so for me, I'm just banking on DeMarco Murray either being gone in 2018 or DeMarco Murray getting injured in 2017. And so that's why I'm investing in Henry as a dynasty asset. I mean, for me, if you've looked at, my dynasty trades on Twitter, I've actually been selling Derrick Henry quite a bit because he's being valued as a top 10 dynasty running back, and things have to happen for him to have a top 10 running back season. And that's where I end up selling guys. But I still love Derrick Henry as a talent, and I think that it's definitely well within his range of outcomes that he's a top 10 running back in 2018.
I didn't realize Henry was being drafted that. So he's 15 in April ADP.
Oh, he's dropped because he was like 9 in like February.
That probably before the
rookies,
got up in there, and then probably Carlos Hyde barely jumped him. So I'm gonna say I'd rather have Henry, but I'm gonna disagree with what you said about the 49ers having to take a running back early to supplant him. Let's go back to Kyle Shanahan's last offense he ran in Atlanta when he drafted Tevin Coleman in the 3rd round, and the 5th round pick from the year before, Devonta Freeman, had a less than spectacular season. He's the one who led the team in PPR points, led the league in PPR points. Let's go back to the destination before that when he first took over as offensive coordinator in Washington, where there was a bunch of guys vying for it. Was what was it? Tim Hightower, Roy Halou, Evan Royster. I think everybody kind of had their guy, but then they drafted a guy in the 6th round in Alfred Morris. He led the team in points and carries and I think was 2nd in the league in rushing yards. And we see it with this rushing system in general. We had Terrell Davis, that was a 6th round pick. We had Arian Foster under Kubiak, which is the same rushing system, who went undrafted. I think that the really sneaky play could be a late round pick by Kyle Shanahan, who he sees as his guy and could come in and be that workhorse. I don't necessarily think that either Shanahan or Kubiak, if you want to throw that whole tree together, sees draft capital for running back as being important.
I think our disconnect here is I'm not saying that the 49ers need to draft a running back early in order for the carries to, get more carries than Carlos Hyde or supplant him as the RB1. I'm more saying I think Carlos Hyde is good enough to fend off any fifth-round running back or undrafted running back. So it's more of I'm not saying that Shanahan is unwilling to give a chance to that late-round guy. I'm saying that late-round guy is unlikely to surpass Hyde based on talent. So, I mean, there's definitely a chance based on, obviously there's late-round running backs every year. I mean, Jordan Howard, supplanted Jeremy Langford after being a fifth-round pick in the NFL draft. So, I mean, it's certainly a possibility, but I'm saying I would bet on Hyde's talent over a fifth-round running back in this class.
How old do you think Hyde will be in week 3?
25.
He will be turning 26 in week 3.
Okay.
And again, I'm not an ageist, but I just think that, like you said with John Brown, if he ends up as a low-end wide receiver 2, I think next year people are going to start thinking about that age. And, Carlos Hyde, if he ends up a low-end RB1, people are going to be like, oh, well, he's turning 27 soon. And I think Derrick Henry, look, you were all aboard the Derrick Henry train last year. Don't let one great running back ahead of him, because like I said with Mark Ingram, man, everybody's in a committee. So if Carlos Hyde's the running back 15, I'm not usually buying running backs in that range. But if somebody values him a little bit lower than that, then I'll be buying, especially like if I have like a 107 and you know what, it would probably have to be an earlier one than that. Like if I had the 106 and like Mixon was still on the board and the Derrick Henry owner preferred Mixon, like I'd prefer Henry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I'm completely off the Henry train. I still like him a lot. I mean, it's more of just the opportunities that have been presented to me through. Hold on, my roommate's talking shit.
It's okay.
Hey, I'm podcasting. Just to let you know, I'm on a podcast. Oh, you're good. All right, hold on. Let me start over that thought. I'm not saying I'm completely off the Derrick Henry train. I was more just talking about how his price has been elevated from his rookie season, from the beginning of his rookie season to now. I mean, I've been able to make deals like Derrick Henry and Martavis Bryant for Corey Coleman and a 2017 second.
Yeah, and I saw that. I like that trade. I like Corey Coleman a lot. So
yeah, and early in this offseason, I traded Derrick Henry in 201 for Alshon Jeffrey. I mean, there are just so many ways to move Henry for an upper echelon wide receiver that I'm willing to make that move and risk that DeMarco Murray gets hurt and Derrick Henry turns into the second coming. But there is still the risk that DeMarco Murray stays healthy and Henry ends up maxing out as like a high-end RB3 in 2017.
Yeah, that's fair. And I like both of those trades specifically for you. I mean, that just sounds like somebody sold really low on Alshon Jeffrey, more so than you selling Derrick Henry, to me.
Exactly.
All right, well, let's wrap this up. In just a minute, we'll be joined by Kevin O'Brien. All right, I am going to send an invite to him. Then I got to make a really quick phone call. I got to miss call. Just a second. What's up, dude? Kevin.
Yeah. You're fine.
What's up, Kevin?
It's not live, so we can always just edit it out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sometimes he barks and we gotta get it out of the morning.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can't hear you.
Why is that?
What, you think he likes you more when I'm gone?
Oh, definitely. When you're gone, I'm the man. Yeah, I'm the man.
Can you hear me now?
All right.
Can you hear me now? Testing 1 2, testing 1 2. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
You can? Cool.
Yeah, my head. I just got these new Bose wireless headphones. I gotta play with them a bit.
Right.
What's up, Kevo?
How you doing, Nathan?
I'm surprised this is the first time we've ever done a pod together.
That does seem odd now. I mean, geez. I mean, so Carl, me and you go way back, but I think I go way further back with Nathan.
Really?
We were both.
I was in his first Dynasty league, so.
Yeah, we were in Seinfeld together, which was our first league together. I don't know if it was your first Dynasty league.
It was my second Dynasty league. So.
Okay, yeah, it was my first.
But I remember Seinfeld. I mean, I feel like I talked to both of y'all back then.
Yeah, you did, but
I think I was asked to join in, and I think I had already started 2 startups that year.
Yeah, we really didn't know what we were doing. It was like late August, and we were like, "All right, let's do a startup."
Yeah, we had no idea what we were doing.
Damn, so y'all started actually somewhat later than I did. My first Dynasty pick was Priest Holmes.
Yeah, no, we weren't that far back. My first was Calvin 101.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But not that Priest Holmes was a good pick, because that was the first year of his decline. All I had access to was a redraft magazine back then. And like nobody explained Dynasty. Like they said, like, yeah, you'll have this player for the rest of their career. Like I understood that, but I got Tiki Barber in the 2nd or 3rd, and that was like by far the best pick of my draft, but I traded him later on draft day. All right, well, let's get to it. Everybody's ready to talk some rookies?
I'm gonna do it.
All right.
It's that time of year.
Shit, Kevin, I mentioned your podcast earlier, but what is the name of it? I listened to it the other day.
Fantasy Football Engineering.
Fantasy Football Engineering. I haven't heard your episode with your first guest yet. But
I listened to the Joe Marino one last week. That's pretty good.
Yeah, Joe was pretty good.
And now we're back with Kevin O'Brien from DynastyLeagueFootball.com, and he started up the Fantasy Engineering podcast, which I've been listening to. How you doing tonight, Kevin?
Awesome, Carl. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to have you. So we're going to talk some rookies because, shoot, by the time some people listen to this, the NFL draft will have already started. It's right around the corner, and it seems like we've been waiting forever. This is a question I think this kind of hits both rookies and veterans in a way. But what's your worst case scenario, Kevin, if you're picking at 106? Because I think a lot of people say that that's kind of where the first tier break is. At least that's the popular thought. So who's the player that you want to not be left with at 106? And if you are in that worst case scenario, what is the worst veteran that you trade the 106 for?
So I think for the worst rookie, I mean, all of them are pretty close for me. The top 6 are pretty close. I mean, I think Fournette, Williams, and Davis are my top 3. And then after that, I have Cook, Mixon, McCaffrey. So landing spot's going to really break up those that top three versus the second half of the three. So in the worst case scenario for 6, I would probably say McCaffrey would be my worst pick right now. I think Mixon's taking a hit right now because of his issues off the field, but I'm not really worried about that after the fact. Guys like Isaiah Crowell kind of give me a good feeling about guys can get it straight and they can, get it on right and be fine in the NFL. So I'm not that worried about Mixon. McCaffrey, I get worried that he gets behind other veterans and takes a little while to get into the mix. It really depends on his landing spot for me.
So let's say that McCaffrey is left at 106 and somebody wants to trade up, trade with you to take McCaffrey. And I assume that if he was left at 106, somebody would want to do that. What's the absolute worst offer that you would accept for the 106 if it was just one straight up one veteran? And you could even use just a second-year player if you want.
I mean, some of this has to go to roster construction for me, but probably the worst case scenario would be taking on somebody like a Doug Baldwin or somebody like that, where it's a little bit older veteran, but could provide me a high ceiling. Because typically I have a well-balanced roster, so I could take on some age, giving away my 106. But otherwise, I mean, I think people are, I'm going to hold my leverage as best I can. At 106, you're basically going to be sitting there with the last premium rookie on the board, and 5 have already gone away. So the likelihood is that somebody's going to really want that pick, and you won't have to be in a worst case scenario. But the worst I think would be one of those higher performing veterans that you kind of like, I really don't want to give up my youth for a veteran, but it's probably the worst case scenario that I would accept.
Wow. So Baldwin's actually going as the overall 28th best player. So it sounds like you're just not trading away that pick. You're going to go ahead and take the player regardless.
I'm going to leverage it because I think the hype is pretty high right now. I've seen some trades out there that don't necessarily jive with the ADP that you find on DLF. Because, as we know, trade value is completely different from startup value.
Nathan, I'll hit the same question to you. Who's your worst player out of that top 6? And if you're stuck in a spot where you're left with that player, who would you trade out for?
So this is kind of delves into our next topic a bit, but the worst rookie situation at 106 for me would be Joe Mixon if he ends up going, day 3 undrafted and ends up going to a team like the Steelers, who already have an established number 1 like a Le'Veon Bell, or maybe a team like the Rams with Todd Gurley. Because the thing about a player that falls that late is that they don't necessarily have to have a huge need at running back. They could have guys in front of them that are still going to take those RB1 carries, and Mixon ends up in a situation where he's only getting like 8 to 10 touches a game rather than 20 to 22. So I think that's the worst case scenario at 106 is that Mixon ends up there because of the fact that he fell so far in the draft or fell to a bad situation. And as far as the worst veteran, I'd say Devontae Parker's the guy that I've seen valued around that 106 that if push came to shove and I really didn't want Mixon or I really didn't want that 106, I'd trade him for Devontae Parker. Or Corey Coleman is the guy that I love a lot, and I don't think that it's justified that he's falling to that valuation, but a lot of people are valuing him around that 106, 107 rookie pick evaluation. So, I mean, if I can, I'm definitely dealing my mid rookie picks for Corey Coleman right now.
And we all agree the DLF ADP isn't the end all be all, but he's being drafted right before Terrell Pryor, Kelvin Benjamin. Would you prefer either one of those to Joe Mixon?
No.
How about you, Kevin? Would you prefer Terrell Pryor, Kelvin Benjamin to Christian McCaffrey?
No.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree with Nathan.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Joe Mixon then. Kevin, I wanted to ask you, if he isn't drafted in the first 2 days, what is his value in rookie draft? And what if he is a first-round pick? Does draft spot matter for him? Does it matter more? Does it matter less?
I think the years I've been playing Dynasty, my inherent thought is that it would. But I think more and more Dynasty players are becoming more and more arrogant where they don't actually believe the NFL anymore. I mean, Jay Ajayi fell and we didn't believe it. We're like, what's the deal here? And look at Ajayi. He's up there in Dynasty value and he's the starter for the Dolphins now. So, I mean, we have plenty of day 3, round 4 plus running backs that have shown success. Lamar Miller was 4th round. Devontae Freeman was 4th round. Latavius Murray was 6th round, and we can debate whether he's good or not, but he's been, say, top 15 RB last couple years. So I think there's plenty of value that you can still get in that 4th or 5th round in the NFL draft that Dynasty or fantasy football really will call BS on for the NFL.
Nathan, you kind of already said that he's probably dropping to your 106 at best, probably if he isn't drafted in the first 2 days. What if he is a first-round draft pick? Does that move him up for you?
Yeah, if he goes in the first, he's probably 102 for me after Fournette. But I don't see that very likely. The more likely scenario, he ends up being 2nd or 3rd round, and in that case, he's pretty much a debate between Mike Williams and Christian McCaffrey for that 103 to 105 range. So I mean, Mixon has a wide range of outcomes of where his value can be between now and in the next 4 or 5 days. And for me, I'm hoping that his value ends up being that 2nd, 3rd, because I think that's the most palatable. But I think that if he goes the first round, people are going to be taking him 101, which is going to be hard to swallow over a guy like Fournette or Corey Davis.
Yeah, I agree. I thought you guys were going to disagree with me. I think that a lot of people are trying to make the case that the draft capital for Mixon doesn't matter. I think it actually matters more. And I get where they're coming from, because if he goes day 3 or undrafted, which is probably unlikely, but possible, then the talent's still there. So everybody can land on can go back to that. But if he does go late, that's just showing what little leash the NFL will give him, not only off the field, but on the field too, because none of these players are sure things. Nathan, this one's for you, first of all. I've been wanting to ask you, I actually kind of commented on Evan Ingram, and we said something about him in DMs the other day, but what is your dream scenario for him, and what's his worst case scenario?
For me, when I talk about dream scenarios, more often than not, I'm not talking about actual landing spots. I'm more talking about where they go in the NFL draft, because that is more related to how many targets they'll get year 1 and then beyond. So, I mean, the dream scenario is that Evan Ingram ends up going in that late 1st round. If we're talking about like a landing spot, I mean, maybe with the Colts, if they traded it back a little bit, I don't see them picking him in the top 15. But like the Colts are a team that let Dwayne Allen go, and they just have Jack Doyle right now. I don't see him as like a long-term plan at tight end. So, I mean, I'm not sure about a team per se, but if Evan Ingram goes in that late 1st round, he's a guy that I'll definitely be targeting in that mid-late 1st round of rookie drafts.
How about you, Kevin?
Yeah, I think for landing spot, I agree with the Colts situation, team that's we're all familiar with using 2 tight ends. I think the ideal landing spot, no matter which one you pick or choose, is one that does feature 2 tight ends. Even a case like the Titans would be fine behind Delaney Walker, which would just delay his return on production a little bit with Walker still there. And I don't know how much they would use a two tight end set in Tennessee, but I think the ideal landing spot is somewhere where they use 2 tight ends right away, and then want to use them. I mean, we've all kind of looked at Pittsburgh as a place that we think that tight end might be able to emerge, just because Roethlisberger liked Heath Miller so much that, it's kind of been an open need for them. So I think landing spot, there's a few different places. We all like the Saints, of course. We always picture that Jimmy Graham stepping up, and that never really happened. Just look at the heat wave that struck upon Fleener's value, and that never came to fruition. So I think at any tight end to go to there that can be in a pass-happy offense, I think would be a great landing spot. And again, a landing spot in terms matters more to me than draft position. I think draft position in the NFL, it matters, but at the same time, I think this is a rich tight end group, and I think there's a heavy defensive pool of players that are in this NFL draft. So you might see some of these higher end tight ends that may have gone higher in the NFL draft in previous years slipping a little bit. I think the Ingrams, the Jake Butts, that second tier and lower those tight ends, you can get some value in the mid-range of the NFL draft. So I'm not really worried about where they get taken in the NFL draft more than I am about landing spot.
I would agree with that as far as Evan Ingram goes. I think for most players, draft capital does matter. What do you view his worst case scenario to be, Kevin?
His worst case scenario would be where they stick him behind somebody like somewhere in Seattle or, where there's just a ton of tight ends, and Russell Wilson just doesn't seem like he wants to nurture those young tight ends. I mean, I like Luke Wilson for a while, and they've drafted a couple young tight ends, and they don't end up using them. I mean, that's kind of the landing spots that you really don't want to see, where they don't feature the tight end. They might use one, but they're kind of happy with what they have right now. And then they just sit on the bench for so many years.
Nathan,
yeah. Oh no, go ahead.
What would you think about a landing spot like San Francisco, where we've seen Kyle Shanahan invest draft capital in Jordan Reed a few years ago? We saw it with we saw Jacob Tamme have a pretty good year as a kind of move tight end, and then oh God, what's his name? The kid I really like, Austin Hooper, is kind of a move tight end too with Shanahan. I personally, I would think that's my dream scenario for him, and you could see that happening in the early second too.
I tend to fade the type of analysis that looks at offensive coordinators and head coaches and what they've done in the past. And okay, this guy had Antonio Gates, so he's definitely going to use tight ends at his next stop. I think more often than not, it's the more talented guys are going to get more targets. The less talented guys are going to get less targets. Sure, you can point, oh, well, Jacob Tamme got this many targets, so even if he's just a mediocre tight end, he's going to get targets. I understand that, but I just tend to fade that analysis more often than not. With Evan,
the question was dream scenario, so I mean, I had to pick a good spot for him.
Yeah, I mean, I see that as an okay scenario. I just think that they don't have a quarterback, and usually that having a quarterback is a good thing for the development of an offense. For me, my worst case scenario is the Jets. I had that love affair with Jay Samaro, and I see any Jets tight end would likely have a similar result to the career of Jay Samaro, and unless they're superiorly talented. I just feel like that's just a situation that's not conducive to tight end production, whether it be the quarterback position, whether it be how the offensive coordinator uses the tight end. So I am hoping that the Jets don't ruin another tight end with Evan Ingram.
Well, what do you mean the 49ers don't have a good quarterback? You don't think Kirk Cousins, who's already signed in 2018, is a good quarterback?
No, he's not.
Okay. All right. Kevin, which quarterback landing spot duo would make you select a quarterback at the end of the first round in rookie drafts? And if early first, or late first is too much for you, at least, what is the best combo that would make you consider one early or mid in the second?
Rookie combo?
Yeah, a quarter, who's your favorite quarterback, and what would their favorite landing spot be?
I mean, I think the obvious pick would be Watson and Williams, just because they have the chemistry already. Put those two.
No, I'm sorry. I might have missaid it. I'm just talking about just quarterback specifically.
With the team.
Yeah. What quarterback is your favorite, and what's your favorite landing spot for him? We could skip that one if y'all want to.
I've got a take on it.
Okay. Let me scrap all that. I'll go to Nathan first, and then I'll go to Kevin. Nathan, I wanted to ask you, which quarterback / landing spot duo would make you select a quarterback at the end of the first round, or what quarterback landing spot duo would be your favorite to make you select a quarterback higher than you normally would?
Yeah, in this class, I don't see a quarterback going in the first round of one quarterback leagues, or even in Superflex league. I don't see any quarterbacks eclipsing that top 6 tier. But for a guy to vault to that 107 in Superflex, or to vault to that 201 to 204 range in one QB, I think that the combo is Deshaun Watson to the Browns at 12. This is a combination that I've wanted to see since 12 months ago when the Browns started their, the movement of metrics and on all those things, and drafting Corey Coleman and getting all those draft picks. The Browns are in a situation where they're going to be a good team in due time, and Watson is going to have a prolific offense with Kenny Britt and Corey Coleman and Gary Barnidge and whatever they bring in the draft. Obviously, they're not done taking receivers and weapons for their rookie quarterback either. So while many of the metrics crowd have talk down with Watson and his miles per hour on his velocity. He does have one of the quickest releases in the NFL draft, according to Sports Science on ESPN. So, I mean, that's one way to combat that. And so I love Watson, and if he goes to the Browns, I'll be very happy with that landing spot.
Well, I think throw velocity is very important, and that's why I'm selecting Kyle Bowler very high in dynasty leagues, because he could throw a football through the uprights from his knees from the 50-yard line. So throw velocity means a lot to me. Kevin, what quarterback would you like to see go to which landing? Well, like, what's your favorite quarterback, and which landing spot would be perfect for you?
The landing spot definitely to me would be the Texans. I think stable coach, offensive-minded coach. I think they got it pretty well together. I think Hugh Jackson's a little struggling to get that team together. I think Houston has the defense, won't be much pressure on the offense. Already have receiving weapons in place, Lamar Miller in place. I think the quarterback landing spot that I'd like the most would definitely be the Texans. As far as which quarterback, I think any of them. I think I like Watson there. I have them the three of them pretty close. Trubisky, Watson, and Kaiser are probably my top three. I've seen O'Brien say that he likes Kaiser, I believe. So give him whatever quarterback he wants, and then I'd like to see him in that offense.
I want to see Watson go to Arizona. And I know that kind of doesn't go to my question, because I wouldn't be taking him in the first round or even early to mid-second. But I think that would drive his price down. I want to see Watson go with Bruce Arians and have a chance to learn under Larry Fitzgerald, who, might be a shell of himself in 2018, but will still be there to mentor a young quarterback. And, John Brown might even be gone by then, but I think they addressed the wide receiver position, and he can learn under Carson Palmer. And I just think that that would be a great situation. And I'm not all in on Trubisky like a lot of these people are. What's the next question?
Carl, one thing I have to add.
Sure, go ahead.
Your guest about a month ago, Pete Manzanelli, the Dynasty dudes and Pete Manzanelli did a live draft hangout last Thursday, and Deshaun Watson went 13 overall to the Cardinals. So you're correct. It already happened, and check out that hangout on Pete Manzanelli's channel.
I saw you guys did that, and so what was the premise? You guys got a hold of a time machine?
Yes, we no, actually the draft did happen. The draft did happen last week, and you're all a week behind.
Oh, so we're just waiting for it to come on cable.
Yeah.
All right. So this is an interesting one. I think I know Nathan's take, because he's anti-slot white receivers. But what happens if a team decides to draft Cooper Kupp earlier than the dynasty community would expect? Is there any way he becomes a top half of the second round of the rookie draft type player for you?
Not the top half.
Okay.
Maybe the mid-bottom half of the second round, but I still think he goes early third. Again, I don't think the dynasty community really responds to that. Once they make up their mind on a player, whether he goes in the first round or the third round or the sixth round, I think the dynasty community usually makes up their mind. I mean, I saw it with Will Fuller last year. He went in the first, and people just said the Texans are crazy. They just scoffed at the NFL, and he still slid into I got him as late as the mid-second last year.
Mid-second in my IDP.
People were taking Carew over him, and
I did. I knew. When I submitted my pick, how on MFL you can type a message like while you're making the pick. I said, I know this is a mistake, and yes, I'm doing it anyway.
So I think I don't think that has. If he gets selected earlier than we think, it really will have an influence. It will matter who picks him. I mean, if Arians or Belichick or somebody like that goes up and picks him, it's possible that we say, hey, they see something in him. But, I think that in general, he's going to be a flyer, and he's going to slide enough anyway.
How about for you, Nathan? Is there any way that Kupp makes it up into the second round for you?
See, this is one of the situations where, like Kevin said, I don't think the fantasy analysts and fantasy community really care One example would be Kenyon Drake last year. He was the third running back off the board, and he was consistently drafted at RB8, RB9 among rookies in rookie drafts. And so I was gobbling him up in that late second, early third of rookie drafts. And so basically what this comes down to is that he's going to end up staying about where he is no matter where he gets drafted. But if he gets drafted in the second, third round of the NFL draft, I'll be the guy that's picking him 2 picks ahead of where his ADP is, because I know that the NFL is a lot smarter than we are, so I'm going to go with the draft capital rather than, what fantasy analysts have been saying for the last 4 or 5 months.
All right, well, that's what
Kenyon Drake was a bad choice, maybe.
Kenyon Drake's about to break out. What you're talking about?
Okay, well, we can write that down. But both of you mentioned what the Dynasty community will do. Nathan, where would he at least exceed your rankings? Would he at least jump in your rankings for what you would have him pre-draft?
My rookie rankings are heavily based on how the market is perceiving things and NFL draft capital. So if Cooper Kupp's going off the board at 25 overall and the NFL ends up valuing him highly, I'm going to rank him at 23 overall, because I don't want to be the guy that ranks a player 23 overall that I wouldn't take until 38 overall, because that doesn't make much sense to me. So it's all about me reacting to the market value and my rankings based on that.
Kevin, one question I wanted to ask you: is there any benefit to trading rookie picks before this weekend, or the opposite?
I typically don't. Just to wait it out. I think sometimes you can run into bad trades, but the benefit would be unless you're trading for the back of a tier. So if you really believe in those top 6 players, then trading for the 106 or even the 107 is probably, a shark move. You can probably get some value there. But I think by now everyone's pretty much caught up. The time would be do it if you could catch early in the market. So if in January, before we really firmed up that's top 6 and we were only sitting at the top 4, that 105 pick would have come pretty cheap, and then you could have jumped on the 105 at value. But I think right now people are already wise to it. So generally right now, I think if you're making trades, you're probably making trades to get more value and move down in the draft, or getting more picks in the top 6 if you're after these rookies.
How about you, Nathan? Would there be any scenario where you'd want to trade picks ahead of time?
For me, I don't think that there's a value reason to do it, but there is just a logical reason to do it. People always talk about in January, February, March, April, hey, wait until after the draft to deal your rookie picks. Wait until you're on the clock when you're in your rookie draft to deal rookie picks. But there's a time and a place for everything, and that there's a time where someone's going to deal a player, and then maybe, the next day, maybe 2 weeks from that now, they won't make that same deal. So I'm all about capitalizing on making a trade when it's available to happen, because there's a chance that same trade, if you like it, it won't be available later on, whether, something happens in free agency, something happens during the NFL draft. So I think that people with the wait and see with rookie picks, they tend to miss out on some deals that can be had.
Nathan, let me ask you, what happens if every skill player goes later than we would have thought? What if there's only 2 first-round running backs and Dalvin Cook falls out of the first and Mike Williams is drafted late in the first to a team that we just didn't expect, and they already have a lot of wide receivers? Could you see, like, if that happens, and we're obviously not looking at the 2014 class, like a lot of people try to compare rookie value like they were 2014 rookie picks. Could there be a benefit of just getting out of the pick now?
I think that there will be a benefit in regards to trading for a veteran. But if you're talking about trading down or trading up or whatever it may be, I think that no matter what happens during the NFL draft, we're still going to view the rookies similarly to how we were before. Maybe there might be, a different 106 versus 107. That's a possibility. But I think that people are going to view the value of the 106 versus the 107 the same pretty much no matter what happens.
Well, let's talk about trading rookie picks then for other rookie picks. Would you trade say the 107? So that's like the beginning of another tier. A lot of people, at least the consensus right now, think the top 6 is similar. Would you trade the 107 for like maybe multiple seconds or like early second and 2/3? Would that be something you'd be interested in?
Right now, it isn't. I think that's the type of trade that you make when you're on the clock, because then there's someone that's trading up specifically to get a player. I think that there's more to be had when someone knows exactly what they're going to get when they get on the clock in that scenario. So if I'm trading the 107 right now for straight rookie picks, I'm either going to want a huge overpay, or I'm just going to wait for it to actually happen on the clock.
How about you, Kevin? If you own the 107 right now, or either way, you could say it both ways. If you own it now, are you trying to get out? And if not, would you consider, since that next tier is considered larger, would you consider the 107 for multiple seconds?
So, not to screw up your premise, but 107, I'm moving for a pick. I'm not moving for a pick. I'm moving for a player. But if I'm moving back, I'd want to look at my next tier and see how wide that tier is. I think, generally speaking, I wouldn't want to go further than, like, say, 16th or 17th overall. I don't want to get into the Dupree, Cannon, Hunt, that range. I want to stay in the Perrine, Samuel, maybe one of the tight ends falls back in that second group. So I wouldn't want to move 2 tiers down, but I wouldn't mind sliding back in that tier if I can get 2 of them. So if I move the 107 and somebody's really targeting, say, Ross or Howard, but then I can move back and get Ingram and Godwin, or Godwin and Samuel, or something like that, where I can get 2 of those top, I want to say 16, 17 rookies versus the 107, then I would do that.
All right. I'm going to put both of you on the spot for the last question. This isn't on the agenda. Give me one NFL draft hot take. Nathan, I'll start with you. What is a hot take? What is going to happen that no one's going to see it coming?
One second. Give me a second. Isaiah Ford goes top 40 picks.
Okay. Kevin, give me a hot take.
Nathan Peterman goes in the second round.
Oh, all right. My hot take, and I'm not looking at any numbers here, so this might be really hot takey, but a record number of tight ends go in the top 3 rounds. And I'll even further that hot take. And it's not a bad idea for most of those teams to do that.
What? How many? You said historic. What do you call
I don't
historic?
know. I probably should have.
I think 2 would be historic.
No, in the top 3 rounds?
Yeah. What would you call historic?
Probably like 7.
Probably 7.
Okay. Let's put a number on that one.
Okay. I say 7 tight ends go in the top 3 rounds. Maybe that's not historic, but that's still my hot take.
I'd even go one further and say that your Redskins are going to take Peterman in the second.
Oh, yeah? Well, how about do you think they may draft a running back in the first? Because a lot of the mocks are showing that.
No.
Yeah, I don't either. All right. Yeah, me too. Well, thank you both for joining me tonight. You could check out both these guys on DLF and check out both their podcasts, the Fantasy Engineering Podcast and the Dynasty Tradecast. You could follow Nathan on Twitter at NPalFF. Kevin not only has an underscore in his name, he doubled up on it with at @the_FF_engineer. You can follow me at Carl Safchik. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and have a good week. All right. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. All right. So quickly, Kevin, because I wanted to pick your brain on this, and you didn't include it in the show.